The chandelier's glow hung above the table like a halo of lies. Gold light shimmered, casting fragile shadows across faces practiced in deceit. Laughter erupted around me, loud, brittle, forced, a mechanical symphony of civility. Every smile gleamed, polished to hide the cracks beneath. Each step echoed across the marble floor, a metronome of dread. My parents moved as if performing a ritual, their voices booming, their gestures wide, rehearsed, artificial. Every word carried the weight of obligation, the burden of appearances. I could see it in their eyes, the constant calculation, the silent fear of exposure, the anticipation of what might go wrong. And then he appeared. My grandfather, Walter Carter. 10 years of absence condensed into one man who entered as though he owned every breath in the room. His presence bent the air, commanded attention, demanded acknowledgement. His eyes found mine, cold and precise, cutting through the fog of pretense like a scalpel. "Emily, are you still living in the house I bought you?" Silence erupted, absolute, suffocating. Forks hovered mid-air, wine trembled dangerously in glasses. My lungs seized, breath thick with shock. I had never spoken of the house. I had never received it. My voice emerged, fragile but defiant. "Grandpa, I don't live in any house. I've never had one." Wine tipped from my mother's trembling hand, spilling onto the pristine tablecloth. An unintentional confession. My father's carefully constructed grin fractured jagged shards of panic and guilt gleaming across his features. Walter Carter turned slow, deliberate, a storm contained in human form, and his gaze landed on them. His eyes were judgment incarnate. Each blink, each micro-expression carried the weight of truth long ignored. They felt it deep in their bones. Their lies, their theft, their betrayal all laid bare. The room's warmth collapsed into an icy vacuum. I realized in that instant that nothing would ever be the same. Not the table, not the laughter, not the fragile illusion of family. For years, I had endured the masquerade. Christmas in the Carter house was never about love. It was a display, a showcase of power and control. My mother's hair sculpted into perfection, each curl a testament to obsession. My father's voice booming, claiming joy, masking insecurity. The towering tree, decorated like a department store window, a monument to appearances. Every detail screamed dominance, wealth, influence, not affection. I parked my dented hatchback 2 houses away, reluctant to defile their aesthetic, reluctant to confront the ghosts of my childhood. Each step toward the door reminded me of every humiliation endured, every cold night alone, every whispered judgment disguised as advice. Inside, the mansion shimmered like a dream designed to mock. Crystal ornaments fractured light into sharp, mocking prisms. The string quartet performed Silent Night, notes precise, sterile, without warmth. Guests murmured compliments, hollow as wind through empty halls. My mother's gaze found me immediately, thin lips pressed into polite disapproval. "Emily, you could have worn something more festive," she said, her voice a blade wrapped in sugar. My father's hand struck my shoulder, a hollow gesture of pride. There she is, my hard-working girl. The words stung, empty of encouragement, soaked in superiority. They ignored every struggle I endured alone, every night spent patching ceilings, scraping together tuition, surviving while they polished their empire of illusion. Then it happened. The doorbell rang, sharp and commanding, slicing through the pretense like a bell of reckoning. The room froze instantly. Every breath, every movement halted. My parents exchanged a glance of terror, eyes wide, lips trembling. And when the door opened, the world tilted. Walter Carter stepped in, snowflakes clinging to his charcoal coat, cane poised, aura unyielding. The man everyone whispered about, the billionaire who abandoned family, returned without explanation, without apology, without hesitation. His eyes sought mine first, piercing, soft, tender. "My girl, look at you," he said, voice trembling, with a warmth no lie could mimic. He embraced me fully, the hug a force of reality, love, and longing, crushing the air around us. My parents flinched, shadows of fear overtaking their practiced composure. Every deception they had built over years crumbled under the weight of a single hug. Asterisk the table, once a monument of gold-rimmed perfection, now felt suffocating. Walter refused the seat at the head, instead claiming mine, an unspoken declaration that the truth mattered more than tradition. Conversations faltered mid-sentence. Candles flickered, their soft glow insufficient against the intensity he radiated. He asked about the house, his words measured, precise, cutting through decades of lies. I could not avoid the truth. I could not escape exposure. The room's walls, lined with wealth and beauty, suddenly pressed in like a cage. Every luxury surrounding me only amplified my poverty, my neglect, my abandonment. And yet, for the first time, I felt seen. Not as a child of the Carters, not as a pawn in their game, but as a person, resilient, exhausted, unbroken. My mind raced with memories long buried. Each Christmas spent smiling through loneliness, each moment of striving for acknowledgement, each quiet desperation while they performed perfection. And now the reckoning had arrived, carried in the quiet steps and piercing gaze of a man who demanded honesty. The air pulsed with anticipation. Every heartbeat, every breath, every subtle shift of posture became a countdown to justice. The house, the table, the chandelier, the curated perfection, all meaningless before the truth. And in that moment, the storm I had long feared finally began, silent yet inevitable, wrapping the Carter mansion in a tension so palpable it could be felt in the bones. The room hung frozen, the golden glow of the chandelier now a mocking halo over my parents' faces. Their carefully constructed armor of smiles and charm had shattered, replaced with panic, fear, and the first tremors of guilt. My grandfather, Walter Carter, remained calm, a titan in human form, eyes sharp and unblinking.
He did not raise his voice, he did not gesture wildly.
The weight of his presence alone carved silence into every corner, folding it around us like a vice. Emily, he said softly, voice low yet carrying across the room, slicing through every forced laugh and whispered excuse. Are you still living in the house I bought you? The words landed like cannon fire. My breath caught in my throat. Forks froze, glasses wobbled, every guest turned toward us as if drawn by some invisible gravity. My chest constricted, memories of years spent scraping by, of ceilings leaking and heat breaking, of nights spent alone studying. Working, surviving, surged through me like fire. I could not lie. I would not lie. No, Grandpa, I whispered, voice quivering with a mixture of shame, relief, and simmering anger. I don't live in any house. I've never had one. The world tilted. My mother's wineglass teetered, spilling crimson liquid onto the white linen. My father's jaw clenched, muscles twitching, the smile that once commanded attention, now grotesque in its strain. Walter Carter's eyes swept the table, locking onto each of them with a precision that cut through every fabrication, every misappropriation, every stolen cent meant for me. Richard, Elaine, he said, his tone calm, deadly, deliberate. Where is the money? Silence roared louder than any words. The guests shifted uncomfortably, as if gravity had reversed, as if the air itself feared the storm bearing down. My mother's lips quivered, barely forming words. My father opened his mouth, then shut it, the sound of his silence louder than any defense he could muster. The full scope of their theft, their deception, now lay bare under the gaze of a man who had built empires, commanded boardrooms, crushed competitors, yet nurtured the truth in a granddaughter he had finally found. Walter rose from his chair, his movement deliberate, every step echoing authority. At 78, age had not weakened him. It had sharpened his presence. He did not shout, he did not slam objects. The room obeyed him without command. My parents rose too, trembling under a scrutiny they had never faced. Guests dared not breathe, caught in the gravity of familial judgment. He did not walk past them, he moved through them. He settled onto the leather sofa beneath the massive Christmas wreath, posture rigid, gaze unwavering. Every inch of him radiated power, justice, inevitability. He asked me, gently, for the details of my life, my home, my struggles. I spoke, cautiously, painfully honest. The small studio apartment behind the laundromat, the patched ceiling, the broken heat, the bucket under the window leak. The words poured out, not as a complaint, but as proof. Proof of years endured, of survival in the shadows of those who should have protected me. My grandfather listened, every line carving a record of betrayal, every syllable building a case of unimaginable deceit. Asterisk, he turned to my parents, his eyes narrowing, the storm finally breaking. 3 years ago, he began, calm, precise, devastating. I sent $400,000 for Emily's home. Money she never received, money you used for yourselves. My mother gasped. My father's face drained of color. Their excuses died in the air. Lies, once comfortable, now hung like chains around their necks, crushing, undeniable. Asterisk, he produced his phone. Every text, every confirmation, every promise read aloud with surgical precision. Thank you, Dad. Emily is settling into the new place and loves it. We'll send photos soon. Photos. The truth hit like ice. Every lie they whispered, every manipulation, every attempt to control my life with deception now shattered under his voice. My father's protestations came too late, weak, fumbling. My mother's tears spilled in desperation. Walter's eyes softened for me, but only me, as if the room contained nothing but the betrayal and the victim of it. Asterisk, you have allowed her to live in poverty, he said, voice low, almost unbearably calm, while you enriched yourselves with her future. That ends now. Every word landed like steel. The room shuddered with the weight of accountability. Guests exchanged glances, unsure whether to leave or pretend they were invisible witnesses to history in motion. The temperature seemed to drop. The fireplace crackled, casting him in a glow of judgment and authority. Asterisk, and in that silence I realized the first pulse of vengeance had arrived. Not loud, not chaotic, not vengeful in a childish way, but precise, controlled. I would no longer be a victim of their lies, their theft, their greed. For the first time, the power had shifted, silently, irreversibly, into hands they could no longer manipulate. The storm had come, quiet yet inevitable, and I would not look away. The morning air was sharp, slicing across my face like a cold blade as I stepped onto the cracked pavement of the city street. The wind carried the scent of snow and exhaust, blending urban decay with the remnants of winter. Grandpa Walter stood beside me, charcoal coat dusted with frost, his cane tapping a steady rhythm against the ground. His presence alone steadied me. Every step toward Jonathan Hale's office felt like a march toward justice. A confrontation long delayed, a reckoning that had been building for years in silence. Asterisk, I could feel the tension radiating from my parents. Even before they arrived, every second stretched into eternity as we waited, the silence thick, almost oppressive. When the door finally swung open at 9:12, they entered like soldiers marching into a battlefield they could not control. My mother's hands trembled violently, clutching her coat as though it could shield her from the consequences of her own actions. My father's jaw was tight, almost painful, veins pulsing visibly along his temple, as if he could strangle the truth itself to stay alive. They did not look at me. They could not. Fear had replaced arrogance in an instant. Asterisk, Jonathan Hale rose from behind his pristine glass and chrome desk, moving with the measured authority of a man accustomed to control, precision, and exposure. Mr. Carter, Emily, he said, extending his hands in polite formality. Though the energy in the room crackled like live wires, his gaze shifted toward my parents, assessing, cold, unyielding. Richard, Elaine, please sit. Let us begin. There was no warmth, no pretense. The air inside the office tightened around them like a noose. Asterisk, the documents were laid out systematically. Jonathan's fingers flipped through the folders with deliberate care. This, he said, sliding a bank statement across the polished table, is the transfer Mr. Carter made to you 3 years ago. $400,000, explicitly earmarked for Emily's home. My stomach clenched. Every line, every figure, every mark was a dagger of truth pointing straight at their lies. Asterisk, my mother's face went pale, eyes wide as if the paper itself had burned her. My father's hands trembled, fingers brushing the edges of the documents, as if mere touch could erase the evidence. "You don't understand," he began, weak, fumbling, a desperate plea masquerading as justification. Jonathan did not flinch. He produced the next page. "This," he said, voice crisp, deliberate, "is where the money went. Traced, every dollar accounted for." Each line was a testament to their betrayal, meticulously gathered, undeniable. My chest tightened with a mixture of fury and disbelief. The life I had clawed through alone, the nights of scraping together rent, of patching ceilings, of surviving without care or comfort, all contrasted violently with the indulgence they had bought themselves with the money meant for me. They tried. "Excuses. We intended to put it in her name later," my father said, voice cracking. "Later?" Grandpa's gaze was sharp, devastating. "After you enjoyed it yourselves? After you enriched yourselves at her expense?" My mother's tears fell uncontrollably, raw, desperate, ineffective. Grandpa did not raise his voice. He did not need to. His calm, resolute authority carried the weight of law, morality, and inevitability. The room itself seemed to hold its breath as justice moved slowly, deliberately, like a tidal wave building behind a calm surface. I leaned forward, voice steady, emotion threading every word with controlled intensity. "You call me irresponsible?" I said, eyes blazing, hand pointing at the documents. "I worked 2 jobs. I paid for my own tuition. I lived in a place you wouldn't let a dog sleep. And you call me irresponsible? You stole my future. You lied. You abandoned me. And every Christmas, you smiled while pretending it never happened." Their faces twisted in disbelief, shock, rage, and fear. The room pulsed with tension so thick it could have been sliced with a knife. Grandpa reached over, gently taking my hand, grounding me while Jonathan Hale continued, calm, efficient, unstoppable. Evidence after evidence laid bare their greed, deception, and betrayal. My parents were powerless, every line of proof a hammer striking the foundations of their control. Finally, Grandpa spoke, voice low, resonant, carrying centuries of authority. "Wisdom and betrayal endured. You lived a life of comfort while my granddaughter suffered. You used her future for yourselves. That ends today." His eyes locked on them, unblinking, relentless. Every syllable weighed them down. The empire they thought secure had crumbled in a single, quiet morning. They had no shield, no defense, no path to redemption. Only the raw exposure of their sins, recorded and undeniable. Jonathan slid a final folder across the table, heavier than the others, sealed in burgundy, stamped with Walter Carter's personal seal. Grandpa's eyes narrowed, calculating, deliberate. The documents inside would seal the ultimate justice. My parents flinched, the weight of inevitability pressing down. "This concludes the matters regarding the misappropriation," Jonathan sighed, crisp as a blade. "Unless someone wishes to contest the will legally." The words hung like steel in the air. My father's jaw tightened, muscles coiling with impotent rage. My mother's tears froze mid-flow. They had no ground, no argument, no moral defense. Only the knowledge that the life they had stolen, manipulated, and distorted was now slipping irreversibly from their grasp. Every heartbeat in that room echoed the finality of their failure. I did not feel triumph yet. I felt clarity. Cold, sharp, inevitable clarity. This was only the beginning of what justice demanded. And at last, I was no longer alone. The air inside Jonathan Hale's office felt sharp, sterile, almost surgical, yet heavier than any winter storm I had ever known. Every surface reflected the truth that was about to strike. Chrome, glass, polished wood mirrors of accountability. Grandpa's posture remained calm, unyielding, yet each line of his face carried centuries of authority, disappointment, and the simmering fire of justice. A weight they had never anticipated. Jonathan carefully opened the burgundy folder, sliding documents across the polished surface. Grandpa's eyes followed every movement, every page, every figure, unwavering, precise. 2 months ago," Jonathan began, Voice steady, slicing through the room like a scalpel. Walter Carter amended his will. As of this amendment, not Richard, not Elaine, not anyone who abused trust or authority, but Emily. My father's chair screeched as he lurched upright, face red, veins pulsing violently. This is insane! You can't be serious! He shouted, desperation boiling into rage. My mother's hands trembled, nails digging into her palms, tears frozen on her cheeks. The empire they had imagined secure, their manipulations meticulously concealed for years, now lay in ruins before their eyes. Every calculation, every lie, every misappropriated dollar, exposed and powerless. Asterisk Grandpa's voice cut through their panic, calm, thunderous in its quiet. I built this empire. I will not leave it to liars, cheats, or those who abandoned the one person I trusted to protect. Emily earned everything through resilience, integrity, and character qualities you forfeited decades ago. Asterisk Jonathan continued, methodically unrelenting. The documents revealed every misused penny, every falsified account, every vacation, every luxury purchased with money meant for my future. My father tried to argue, but words stumbled, weak against the evidence stacked like an unassailable fortress. My mother's sobs grew louder, shaking her entire body as reality closed in. Grandpa did not flinch. He did not comfort them. He looked at me, eyes softening only for me, and I felt the weight of decades of neglect lift, replaced by a profound, almost terrifying clarity. Asterisk, you lived in poverty, Grandpa said quietly, yet with a steel undertone that made the room shiver, while they lived in indulgence funded by your inheritance. Every day, every sacrifice, every moment of endurance, unnoticed by those who should have cherished you, that ends now. Asterisk Jonathan tapped the folder, drawing attention to the final page. This is the documented evidence of full transfer of Clearwater Bend property to Emily Carter within 7 days. Failure to comply will result in formal charges, fraud, misappropriation, and breach of financial trust. Asterisk the room froze again. My mother gasped, face pale, jaw slack. My father's chair scraped backward as he leaned away, a man suddenly too small to fill the space he once dominated. The words hung like ice, charges, legal action, public exposure. Every lie laid bare, every action punished. Justice was no longer a whisper, it was a decree, executed with surgical precision. Asterisk, I finally understood the depth of the plan. My parents had imagined control. They had imagined concealment. They had assumed their influence could withstand scrutiny. But they had miscalculated. They had underestimated truth. They had forgotten that I was no longer alone. That Walter Carter, a man who had survived empires, betrayal, and human cruelty had returned to set the scales straight. Asterisk Grandpa placed a firm hand on my shoulder. His touch was warm, grounding, a silent affirmation that this was my victory, as much as it was his. Emily, he whispered, eyes bright with restrained emotion. You earned this, not because of wealth, not because of inheritance, but because of who you are, strong, honest, resilient, brave. Asterisk, I felt tears prick the corners of my eyes, not from sorrow, not from loss, but from the release of years spent carrying shame, fear, and abandonment. Every moment of struggle, every night spent alone, every sacrifice had led to this moment. A life rebuilt from resilience, from truth, from unwavering endurance. I inhaled sharply, feeling the weight of the past fall away, replaced with clarity, strength, and ownership. Asterisk Jonathan closed the folder with a sharp click, final, irreversible. Grandpa rose, every motion deliberate, commanding, a living embodiment of justice. My parents remained frozen, unable to reconcile the life they had manipulated with the reality imposed upon them. They had lost control, lost deception, lost everything they had believed secure. The empire they thought untouchable now belonged to the one they had tried to suppress, manipulate, and abandon, me. We walked out together, Grandpa and I, into the crisp air of the city morning. The sun glinted off glass towers, reflecting clarity, sharpness, and the first light of a life reclaimed. The cold wind bit at our cheeks, but for the first time, It felt invigorating rather than punishing. I was no longer a victim. I was no longer alone. I was empowered. I had survived. I had endured. I had prevailed. Weeks later, the documents were signed. The lake house, once a symbol of their indulgence and theft, became mine. Walking through its tall windows, white oak floors, and perfectly still waters, I felt the weight of survival transform into triumph. Every room held the memory of struggle. Every corner whispered perseverance. Grandpa's presence remained in spirit, guiding, steadying, reminding me that resilience and integrity outlast deceit and greed. The Carter's empire, built on lies, had shifted. The power, the control, the legacy all returned to its rightful inheritor. I stood on the lake house balcony, the cold wind whipping through my hair, and realized that this was more than a victory. It was the embodiment of every lesson learned, every battle endured, every moment of courage born from suffering. I was no longer defined by their neglect. I was defined by my own strength, my own choices, my own unbreakable spirit. And in that clarity, I whispered to the wind, to the reflection of snow on water, to the memory of a man who believed in me. When no one else did, I am here. I am enough. I am free. And I will honor you always. Every footstep echoed against white oak floors, the sound crisp, unfamiliar, yet comforting. I ran my fingers along the polished surfaces, tracing lines of sunlight spilling through floor to ceiling. Windows, catching reflections on the still water outside. For the first time, silence was not heavy or suffocating. It was full of possibility, full of potential, full of life I had earned, not stolen, not borrowed, not survived on scraps of others' deception, but life built entirely by resilience, integrity, and unshakable will. Grandpa Walter's words reverberated in my mind. You earned this because of who you are. Stacked the first sketchbooks, laid out the first furniture. Each object, each carefully chosen piece, no longer a symbol of mere survival, but of reclamation. I could breathe freely here. I could dream. I could create. For the first time, I felt a sense of ownership, of belonging. Sunlight flooded the space, illuminating sketches, blueprints, and prototypes of the furniture and interiors I had dreamed of creating while cramped in my small apartment. Clients came slowly at first, single mothers, students, people struggling to build homes that felt human, warm, safe. And as I helped them, I realized something profound. I was giving the life I had been denied to others. Every consultation, every recommendation, every careful, empathetic design carried the weight of my own struggles. It was not just business. It was justice in motion. Grandpa's health began to falter 2 months later. I visited his private suite daily. The city skyline sprawled beyond the glass walls, snow settling quietly outside. Some days he recounted stories from his early years' delivery trucks, nights on the road, boardrooms where a wrong move meant ruin. I listened, mesmerized, absorbing lessons hidden in nostalgia and grit. Other days he simply held my hand, eyes half closed, breathing slow but unsteady. His trust, his belief had transformed my life, and I was determined not to let it fade. You're my legacy, he told me one evening, voice weak yet piercing, eyes brimming with tears that reflected a lifetime of victories, losses, and redemption. Not the company, not the money, you. His hand squeezed mine, grounding me, reminding me that resilience and character mattered more than empires and fortune. I promised him I would stay, that I would carry his belief forward, that I would honor him by living fully, by building, by thriving. As weeks passed, I settled into a rhythm that felt profoundly right. The lake house became more than a home, it became a sanctuary. I organized community design workshops, volunteered at housing nonprofits, mentored young designers who had never had someone to guide them. I transformed spaces for people who had never believed they deserved beauty, care, or comfort. Every action was a reflection of the life I had clawed for, a life that had been nearly stolen from me. Christmas approached again, a year since the confrontation that had shattered my parents' control. I decorated the lake house simply: white lights, soft glow, minimalism that celebrated warmth over ostentation. I brewed hot cocoa and placed 2 mugs on the fireplace hearth, one for me, one for Grandpa's memory, the chipped ceramic cup he had always favored. I stood at the window, inhaling deeply, and whispered softly, "Grandpa, I'm okay. I'm living well, just like you wanted." And in that quiet moment, I understood the full weight of survival and triumph. The fear, the neglect, the lies, the years of scraping by, the struggle to exist in a world designed for others, it all had led here. I had reclaimed my life. I had restored justice. I had honored those who believed in me and faced those who had betrayed me without flinching. I had survived, yes, but now I thrived. The world beyond the lake house remained unpredictable. The Carters faded from my life, their presence no longer a shadow, only a cautionary tale of deceit and greed. My grandfather's memory became my compass, his lessons etched into every choice, every action, every client I helped, every design I created. I moved forward not with vengeance burning behind me, but with clarity, strength, and purpose guiding me. And finally, for the first time, Christmas no longer hurt. It became a symbol of hope, of resilience, of triumph over betrayal. The lake reflected the sky, still and glassy, mirroring a life reclaimed, a future earned. I knew the past would always echo, but it no longer chained me. I was free. I was strong, understanding where there had once been confusion, and hope where there had once been despair. For the first time, the world felt entirely mine, and I vowed silently, fiercely, that I would honor Grandpa's belief, protect the truth, and live a life of purpose, courage, and unbreakable strength. The storm had passed, the empire had shifted, the betrayal had been punished, and the life I was always meant to live had begun.